Hi folks, it's Bright Garlick here. I want to talk to you about something that's been bothering me for a long time, but it's bothering me more at the moment than at any point in the last couple of years. Some of you will remember that I documented an encounter that I had on January 19th, 2011, which began right here where we are and continued a kilometre away. During that encounter, I was shown something, and I said a little about that at the time, and I also wrote a little about that on my blog, Otherworldly Encounters. I suppose the risk of talking about this now is that events unfold very differently and I look like a complete dickhead. But I don't really care. There's always a risk that when you say something on the internet that turns out otherwise, that somebody will remember that and hold it against you. So even though I am reluctant to talk about this, I feel that I need to say something because just got some people walking past and I'm very uncomfortable with this, so just give me a minute. So let's continue. During that encounter with the Teal'hia, I was shown a large segment of the human future. And there was both what we would consider good and bad. I would say that if I was to give a quick summary, I guess I'd have to say that shit is going to hit the fan, but there is a lot of good to come. We're kind of near the bottom of the J-curve. And the reason that I was shown what is to come is because I asked specifically about two events, and I was shown things about those events, but I was also shown how Earth will change. Not just as a result of these events, but the kinds of changes that are coming our way. Now, during other parts of that encounter, I was also shown some very personal things about my own future and the future of particular relatives. And this isn't the first time I've been shown things, and it probably won't be the last time. And I've had a lot of people ask me about these things, and I've written a little bit about metaphors for time to try and explain that there are possibilities that I don't believe that any of these are certainties that are fixed in stone. I don't think time is like that. But what I can tell you is that the Teal'hia said to me, "We wish to show you what is to come." And at different times during that experience, and this is what the experience was, there was a large projection of sorts, though you wouldn't say it was a projection, it was literally like seeing things that are real, three-dimensional. It was above my head. I was sitting in a car park and I could hear dialogue for the different things that were happening, people that were experiencing events, newsreaders, announcements, all kinds of things. And I'm pretty sure the dialogue was in my head. I don't think anybody who was there would have necessarily heard what I was hearing. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, because I didn't have anybody else there to compare this with. Other times on board craft where there have been other people with me, other people have heard these things, but this time it was very personal, and I don't think it was out loud. I don't think. The whole experience was so strange, it's very hard to know sometimes. So I was given a lot of protection during the experience. They placed their hands on my neck and my head and my back at various times, more than one entity, because they knew I would be physically sick. Not only being with them, which I had been earlier, but watching and, in a sense, experiencing the things that I was seeing. And there were many very painful, dark things that I saw, and I did feel quite nauseous and unwell watching it, and even remembering those things makes me feel very uncomfortable. And I guess to some extent that's why for the last, nearly 2 years, I've been very uncomfortable with the development of certain world events, because I could see, if you like, stepping stones or dominoes to what I've been shown. So the final comment I want to make before I tell you what I saw is I don't have a good understanding of time, and I don't think any of us do. There are lots of metaphors we can use, a river, a braid, timeline, all kinds of things. And in a sense, time is a projection created by our minds. So I would like to suggest that on the current timeline that we're on, it appears that we are heading in the direction of what I was shown. But that could change. Okay. Okay, I'm going to give you a rough summary of the events that I was shown. I've been writing about the deterioration of events in the Middle East on my blog, which I no longer keep. Well, it's there, but I'm no longer actively blogging. And so I've been concerned about events deteriorating between Iran and Israel, and I think you can see now that that is starting to happen. So one of the things that I remember was the election of Obama, and also very clear development of this pattern between Palestine and Israel. I remember seeing Israeli trucks launching rockets into Palestine. I don't believe it's just in the Gaza Strip, but other areas of Palestine. At some point as well, Israel attacks Syrian forces, and I don't think it's just incursions through Syrian airspace of missiles or craft, or vice versa from the Syrians. This is an active attack on Syrian forces, on Syria. And the key to this whole conflict appears to be Hezbollah. Now, when I was shown this, I couldn't say that I had a good handle on geopolitical events in the region, and I still can't say that I have. I've had to do a lot of research to try and get my head around it. Hezbollah seemed to be a catalyst in this whole thing. Hezbollah in Lebanon are allies with I guess you'd say much of the Muslim cause in the Middle East, and particularly with Iran. Hezbollah infiltrate or invade Israel, and it appears there is evidence now that they certainly have that capacity, but things really go up a notch. And the war between Iran and Israel begins in earnest. And it develops very quickly, and it pulls in many of Iran's neighbours. And I guess you would say these are, brothers and sisters in the Islamic cause. And so in a sense, Israel is very alone. And there's a reluctance by the US to really take any kind of action. And I think that in a sense, that gives Israel freedom on its leash, if you like, to do what it wants. And so things between Israel and Iran become very bloody. At some point, Israel launches a nuclear attack on Tehran, and it destroys Tehran. There is heavy condemnation from countries all around the world, including Russia and the US, of course. And UN forces mobilize. There are many ships in the Persian Gulf and the Red Sea and the Mediterranean Sea and the Gulf of Oman. And I'm assuming that many of these ships there are to support the American effort. And I'm not even sure who the Americans seem to be supporting. You have to realise, when I saw this, I don't know how long I sat down for, maybe 30 minutes. And it wasn't just this I was looking at, this was just part of it. It was shown to me very quickly. There were just snippets. I was hearing, snippets of dialogue, like at one point, an Israeli leader, military leader, is saying, withdraw, withdraw, and Hezbollah are keeping up their attack, and Iran are retaliating, and you can see the rhetoric and the emotion in the dialogue, not just the fighting, and it's very hard to take it all in, very hard. And I'm going on my memory of what was a very tumultuous, turbulent, difficult event for me to experience, the whole event, and this was just part of that event. So I may not have some details right. Now there's a lot, I've written this stuff down for myself, there's a lot of detail there that I've made a note of, and I can see little pieces falling into place. And I really hope it doesn't lead to that, because that impact is catastrophic. Oil supply is cut off. There is fallout across the Middle East and in other places, and events deteriorate very, very quickly in other parts around the world, other places around the world. And in the Korean Peninsula, tension starts to ratchet up very, very quickly. I think it's about the same time. Now it's very difficult to gauge time. There may have been dates given, but I'm not clear about that. And so there appears to be tension between the US and North Korea, and North Korea attempts to launch several missiles at North America, and they're intercepted. They're intercepted by several UFOs, and they're brought down in the Pacific Ocean. Now you might ask, well, why do they do that and they don't do the other? I don't have an answer to that. All I can say is, why did they allow Hiroshima and Nagasaki and all the testing that's taken place that they could have prevented? And the only answer I can come up with is that maybe, there are two possible answers here. Maybe they think that by allowing such an event to take place despite the loss of life and the suffering, and believe me, they feel for this suffering, they have great compassion. Maybe they feel in the long run that will change our human behaviour. The unfortunate isolation of Israel and the obvious impact of nuclear weapons will have a catastrophic impact on our whole species and how we see war. It may also be that in the long run, imagine if you had the eyes of God, or some of these ETs who live a very long time and for whom time and space are not objects as they are for us. They can see through these things. They can move across space, they can see across time, move across time. It may be that in the long run it is more beneficial for Israel to go through this experience, more beneficial for Iran to go through this experience. I don't know. I don't have an answer. All I know is that they think of the greatest possible good. And maybe to allow such an event to take place for the greatest possible good is what will happen in the long run. Why stop one event and not another? I'm not sure, but my gut feeling is that if there was a nuclear strike on US soil, maybe we're talking about the end of human civilization, maybe the retaliation. It could trigger, retaliation between superpowers. It could see the end of our civilization. I don't know. So that's that event, and that I'm going to tell you something in a minute, and you find it difficult to understand what I'm saying. For some reason, that's the event that troubles me the most. Maybe it's because I saw so much suffering. I don't know, but it does trouble me deeply, and every day I watch the news and am trying to keep tabs on this. And every day little pieces, little dominoes fall into place that seem to be leading in this direction. So if I'm wrong, there are obviously going to be people who would like to crucify me for that. That's fine, I can take that. And if I'm wrong, maybe somehow the timelines are malleable and steps have been taken to prevent things deteriorating that way. Or perhaps there's another timeline, not one that I happen to coexist in at the moment, or either of us, any of us, somewhere where this has taken place. I don't have an answer to that, really. All I can say is I would like to be wrong. I would like this not to happen. But if I'm right, I think it's important that people get educated quickly about what's happening and put as much pressure as they can on their governments to take diplomatic steps to try and prevent things deteriorating. Now, we're talking about conflict in a region that has lasted for thousands of years. In many ways this is the cradle of humanity, and we came out fighting and have continued So maybe diplomacy isn't enough to prevent this, but it's up to us to try to put pressure on our governments to be diplomatic, to use the pressure of diplomacy and organisations like the UN to put a stop to what is happening, and for bloggers around the world to unite. We have groups like Anonymous who are threatening to bring down the internet in Israel, or within the government in Israel, and defence within Israel. I don't condone that, but I can appreciate why they're doing it. But I think it might be really useful for anybody with a blog to get educated and start speaking out. And if you have the power to do so, write to your government, contact your government, write to the media, contact the media, raise the profile of these issues, and do what you can to encourage diplomacy now. It's the only other option that we have. So what I also saw is a major catastrophe. And what I would like to say is I had been writing about 2011 for a while, and I think 2011 really was a turning point for our civilization in many ways. People talked about 2012, and I didn't buy into all that kind of stuff. And it was only after that event I became convinced that there is something else that is going to change humanity. I have been have an interest in solar activity for more than a decade, and wondered whether or not the sun would ever release dangerous storm. 2008, there was a report released, I think off the top of my head, societal and economic impacts of severe space weather. Many other reports have been released since. I've written about that on my blog. You can find that information there under severe space weather. And I started researching it, and it became evident that we are vulnerable towards solar storms. And a severe solar storm, which would start with a major sunspot releasing a coronal mass ejection, could cripple many of the world's power grids and lead to chaos. And of course, in the last 2 years, many people have started talking about that, and it is now well established, I think, within the culture that there is this very real risk. So that was one of the questions that I asked the Teal'hia during that encounter. Do I need to be concerned about this? Will this happen? They showed me a major solar catastrophe. And the sense I got was that I'm not sure about this, but it appeared to occur some point during this fighting, and for the most part it stops the fighting. The time that I feel, and I can't, as I said, I'm not sure about dates. It's not like they sat down with me and said it's going to happen on, July 4th, 2014 or anything like that, at 3:10 p.m. It wasn't like that. And there's a lot that you walk away with after an encounter like that you don't remember, whether that's because you've been so emotionally affected or because they have taken something away. But I do have a feeling that this event is going to take place between well, let's say early March. I'll give you a wide window here. Early March and late April 2013. And the event is this. The Sun releases two major X-class flares within a short time period. Within 12 hours of one another. They impact with Earth. I think they are. I've written down the exact details, but I can't quite remember. Yeah, higher than any X-class flare that we've seen before. Yeah, I can't quite remember off the top of my head now. They have a catastrophic impact on power grids. And I've documented elsewhere for myself the countries that are most affected. But I'll just keep this brief, and at a later point I'll make this a more extensive video. Many countries are affected by the loss of power and the collapse of infrastructure. And of course that includes the loss of food, fuel, emergency services. The countries most affected are the US, Japan, Indonesia, Bangladesh, China, and India. Many other countries, including England, are also affected. At this time, and as a result, I believe, of the solar flares and the coronal mass ejections, Earth goes through a turbulent readjustment, if you like. It was explained to me once that between the planets, it's kind of like between the planets and between the Sun and Earth and the Sun and every other planet, it's kind of like two knights jousting, you know, kind of for supremacy. You know, sometimes a knight gets knocked off and he's got to get back on. Other times they both affect one another. They're both knocked off. And in the case of this particular event, the impact is huge. And there are natural forces at play that are affected by solar weather. And these include tectonic movement, volcanoes, earthquakes, atmospheric conditions, and so on. What I was also told, I don't know if I documented on my blog, there was a point earlier this year when there was a visit to our house. Several different entities came, different races, and I'm going to keep this very simple. I don't think I should go into the detail. They suggested that a decision had been made to lessen the impact of this event. And that decision had been made by a very large collective. You know, forget the Galactic Federation of Light and all this crap. That's just bullshit. People don't know what they're talking about. There is a collective which represents a very large portion of what we would know as the universe, and there are upwards of 750,000, maybe almost 1 million civilizations, races represented by this group. And a decision had been made to lessen the impact, and I'm simplifying that because it's much more complex than that. And I think the reason that the decision had been made, and they'd been considering that decision for some time, is because they thought that humans would take the measures necessary to prevent this catastrophe. I mean, this stuff happens all the time, it's no big deal. But, you know, we have power grids now, and humans know how to safe-proof our power grids. The transformers are the things that are vulnerable, and there appear to be known mechanisms, you know, engineers have known this stuff for a long time, to basically keep these transformers safe, keep them grounded, so that they don't basically melt down and then the power grid collapses. So this has been known for a long time. And the sense I have is that our alien friends thought they would make a very different decision, have waited for that opportunity, it hasn't happened, and have now chosen to lessen the impact. So you might ask, why are they not going to stop the whole event? The only sense I have is this, or this is one thing that was explained to me. Earth needs this. Solar system is an exchange of energy, if you like, between the sun and all the planetary bodies, and between the planetary bodies. And Earth stays alive, owes its life, if you like, to energy, cosmic energy, and energy from the sun. And so I guess the way that I understand this is that with that solar energy, Earth is able to have a molten core, maintain a magnetic field, an atmosphere, and so on. So if you were to take away these cyclical events and stop Earth receiving this energy, if you like, our core would probably begin to cool, and then magnetic field weaken, we become more vulnerable to solar events and other cosmic events. Atmosphere would deteriorate, life would cease to be ultimately. And so this seems like a very big event, and Earth needs the energy. So it appears that this intervention is, I think it's doing two things. I think it's reducing some of the solar energy that will reach Earth, and it is also buffering Earth from particular forms of energy. I don't know, maybe they're protons or things like that. But what they explain to me is that they are doing certain things to the Earth's surface, the Earth's core, and our atmosphere. And they have been doing these particular activities for quite a long time. I mean, they're always actively involved in something like this, but this protective intervention, the early phases of this have been occurring since 2005, maybe before, I'm not sure, but I remember being shown it then. And at that stage, they were placing, I'm shown how there were ETs placing what looked like small devices around the planet, some of them even under the oceans. They have the capacity to go in, and let's say they go in under the ocean, they're able to go deep down to the ocean and somehow create some sort of vacuum. All the water's removed, and interface with the bottom of the sea. So that seems to be something they've been doing for quite a while. So there is, I suppose you'd say there are probably different levels of intervention, some more serious than others, and so they've made this decision to undertake this other form of intervention that will basically, it was never said this way, but the way I understand it is, without this intervention, human civilization might not survive, and other creatures may be affected as well. So this intervention is lessening the blow. But as it is, there will be many, many, many millions of deaths. So once again, if this doesn't happen, good, okay, I tick the dickhead box. And maybe time-wise, I haven't understood that well. Maybe that event could still happen. I don't know. I'm just putting this out so that people are prepared. I've also written at length on my blog, Otherworldly Encounters, about how to prepare for such an event. And it's not just, getting your food together and digging a bunker and trying to hide it out. There are lots of different aspects to preparing for an event like this. Some are psychological, some are social, some are community. So I've written a little about that. You can find that information there under I think I took all the articles that I wrote and put them into one tab, preparing for severe space weather, so you can find that there. I'll put the links in the show notes, and they are video notes anyway, so you can find them. I just wanted to add one more thing, and I didn't plan on talking about this, but I've just been reminded of it. I've been very conscious of this for a long time, and I just want to touch on it, because I'm not sure how it's going to play out. I'm not into a lot of New Age things, and I don't like a lot of the memes that are around, and I'm not going to tell you I'm a starseed or an indigo child or any of that kind of crap. I'm just not going to go there. And some of the stuff that I believe might be considered to be way out. God, I consider the fact that I've had these encounters, or I believe that I've had these encounters, to be pretty way out. But, 2 other people in this household have had them as well, and been part of my life for a very long time. So I'm quite comfortable with that, whether other people are or not. I urge you to make up your own mind as to whether you believe any of this. Of course, everything that I have to say will probably agitate most religious people, particularly Christian fundamentalists, so this message isn't for you. You stick to your beliefs. So I wanted to talk about something just to give you another perspective. There are doorways around the planet that are like, I don't like the word Stargate, I think it's misleading. Yeah, I don't like it at all. I prefer the word doorways, although these are all metaphors really, places of passage or, whatever. It's a metaphor for describing a way of, or a place where you can go from somewhere to somewhere else, or some time to somewhere else. So there are doorways around the planet, and I don't believe they line up with any harmonic grid or anything like that. There would be reasons for why they exist. I can tell you I know of one within a short driving distance of here, and another one about an hour from here. And there are, people talk about the powers that be and the Illuminati and the Trilateral Commission and the Bilderbergs and blah 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 blah, all that crap. Well, I've learned about these different groups who have what we would call control. I don't like that word though. And I've learned about some of this from somebody who worked with them. And from the ETs. ETs openly speak of things when you ask them, at least the ones that I have contact with. And so I've written about this power structure, and I call it the architecture. I've written about that a little on my blog, and I'm not willing to talk more about that at this point. But I just wanted to say that there are doorways all around the world. There are somewhere in the order of 40 to 50 doorways, and there are also doorway keepers around the world, and these are extraterrestrial entities who, for the most part, blend with the populace. They look human. They are not human, but they look human, or they are perceived as human, and their role is primarily to look after the doorways and make sure that any of the races that use the doorways are safe. That's all. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say for now. So I wanted to say something. It appears to me that some of these doorways, as I understand it, these doorways are artificial, but I think there are some that are natural. And it appears that some of these doorways are becoming, or have done maybe for the last 5 or 6 years, become more active. And what I would like to say is that over the next couple of years, particularly with this increased solar energy, we should expect that some of these doorways will become much more active, not necessarily in the sense that there will be more entities using them, even though that's possible, in the sense that they may open and close more often as a result of some of this surplus solar energy. So I think we can expect to see more anomalous phenomenon, including all the usual suspects, as a result of this. Now, yes, people in the New Age thing have got this all figured out, and they're talking all about the alignment with the galactic center and the superwave and all this kind of crap. And I think they're wrong. As I understand it, if you consider Earth and our solar system, where we are based in the Milky Way galaxy, and the smaller arm that we're based in, and I'm not sure that model is correct, or we've got the number of arms right, the 5 arms. As I understand it, we are entering, if you were to flip the galaxy on its side vertically, turn it around like that, we are entering a region, our arm, I guess, and our solar system within that arm, of greater celestial density, greater density of celestial bodies. And because of that, there is much stronger energy in our solar system. I also believe that there is a brown dwarf that is our companion star. I don't think it's going to enter our solar system, but I think it's very close, and I think this is increasing the energy which will be, or is coming, into our solar system and affecting our sun. Think of two bodies approaching one another. They have a strong magnetic force, and that magnetic force also affects the energy coming out, the energy of repulsion as well, attraction and repulsion. I think the whole idea of the superwave and the galactic center, that's just naive. I don't think we understand that science well enough. Certainly the understanding I've got from the ETs is that that's not at all right. So I'm not about to tell you that I've channeled that or anything like that. I'm just going to tell you face to face that they said to me, no, that is wrong. So just coming back, because of our location, and these things are very cyclical, they happen on smaller cycles and larger cycles, I think we can expect to see more anomalous phenomenon, and expect that more of these doorways will be opening and closing. The whole notion that we're going into the 5th density and we're all about to ascend up our asses and all the rest. New Age dribble. Yeah. So that's all I wanted to say for this video. I hope I didn't frighten you, and I'm quite happy to be wrong about this. I would much rather be wrong about this. For anybody who is frightened, I would suggest get educated. Be content within yourself. Know who you are. see mankind's stupidity. This doesn't have to have anything to do with prophecy or the kingdom of God or Armageddon, anything like that. This is human stupidity. And as a civilization, as a species, we move through cycles like everything else. This too will come to pass. So learn to love life and enjoy life, and if you can leverage the wheels of diplomacy and democracy, try and do so. I also will be disabling comments for this video because I've received lots of negative feedback in the past, and this is something a little more provocative than most of my videos, so I will be disabling comments, so please accept that. Thank you very much for getting this far. Cowabunga, peace and goodwill to all.